"What is this dirty thing doing near my daughter?" I said, "Get out of here right now." The deep voice boomed like thunder across the perfectly cut grass. Esther froze. Her heart hammered against her ribs like a trapped bird. She dropped the small, broken pencil she was holding. It hit the ground with a tiny sound that felt like a gunshot in the silence. She looked up, trembling. Standing there was a man who looked like a giant. He wore a suit that cost more than her entire life. His eyes were burning with anger. And next to him stood Sarah, the girl Esther had been secretly teaching. Sarah looked terrified. Esther wanted to run, but her legs wouldn't move. She was barefoot, wearing a torn dress that smelled of the streets, standing in a garden that smelled of roses and money. The man took a step forward, his shadow covering her completely. "Did you hear me?" he shouted, raising his hand. "Security!" Esther shut her eyes tight, waiting for the blow. She was just a street rat. He was a king. This was the end. But what happened next didn't just shock Esther. It shocked the entire world. Before we get to that unbelievable moment, please take a second to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. It really helps us bring you more touching stories. Also, drop a comment below and tell me where you are watching from. I love reading your replies. Now, to understand why a billionaire was screaming at a helpless little girl, we have to go back to the beginning. We have to go back to the dust and the dirt, to a life that no child should ever have to live. Esther was 12 years old, but her eyes looked like they had seen 100 years of pain. She didn't know what it felt like to sleep on a soft bed. She didn't know the taste of warm milk or the feeling of a father's hug. She lived on the hard concrete streets of the city with her mother, Naomi. But Naomi wasn't really there. Her mind had broken years ago. Naomi would sit by the gutter, talking to invisible people, laughing at jokes no one else could hear, and chasing after birds as if they were her lost friends. "Mama, please sit down," Esther would whisper, trying to wipe the dirt off her mother's face with a rag dipped in water from a public tap. "The angels are coming, Esther," Naomi would shout, pointing at a garbage truck. "They are bringing my golden shoes." Esther would just nod, fighting back tears. "Yes, Mama. Sit down and wait for the shoes." People passing by didn't look at them with kindness. They looked with disgust. One hot afternoon, a large woman selling oranges stopped in front of them. She looked at Naomi, then at Esther and spat on the ground, the spit landing just inches from Esther's bare toes. "You and this mad woman should leave this place," the woman hissed. "You are smelling up my business area. Go and die somewhere else." Esther didn't say a word. She just pulled her legs in tighter. She was used to it. She had been called gutter girl, rat, and cursed child so many times that the names didn't even hurt anymore. What hurt was the hunger. The hunger was a monster that lived in her stomach. It growled and twisted, keeping her awake at night. Sometimes, Esther would close her eyes and pretend she was eating a big plate of rice and chicken. She could almost smell it. But when she opened her eyes, there was only the smell of exhaust fumes and rotting trash. But even in the dirt, Esther had a secret that sparkled brighter than any diamond. She was a genius. She had never been to a real school, but she learned from everything. She learned to read by picking up old newspapers that people threw away. She learned math by counting the cars that zoomed past and calculating how much money the hawkers made. One day, a miracle happened. Or at least Esther thought it was a miracle. A woman named Mary, who ran a small food stand near the bus stop, noticed them. Mary was different. She didn't spit. She didn't frown. She watched Esther carefully for days. One evening, Mary walked over with a warm plate of food. Steam was rising from the rice, carrying the smell of spices that made Esther's mouth water instantly. "What is your name, little one?" Mary asked softly. "Esther," she whispered, looking at the food but afraid to touch it. "Eat, Esther," Mary said, smiling. "It is for you." That plate of rice was the best thing Esther had ever tasted. Mary came back the next day and the next. She brought soap. She brought old clothes. She helped Esther wash the layers of street dust from her skin. "You are a pretty girl," Mary told her as she combed Esther's tangled hair. You don't belong here. Mary made a decision. She used her own savings to pay for Esther to go to a small, cheap school down the road. She bought her a uniform. It was second-hand and a bit faded, but to Esther, it looked like a royal robe. When Esther walked into that classroom for the first time, she felt like she was floating. She sat at a wooden desk and touched the smooth surface. She smelled the chalk dust. It was heaven. The teacher wrote a math problem on the board. Who can solve this? Before any of the other children could even pick up their pencils, Esther's hand shot up. Yes, the new girl? The teacher asked, looking skeptical. Esther stood up and gave the answer clearly. The teacher blinked. She wrote a harder one. Esther answered that one too. Within weeks, Esther was the top student. She soaked up knowledge like a dry sponge soaks up water. She memorized poems, she understood science, she wrote stories that made the teachers cry. For the first time in her life, Esther had hope. She thought, maybe I can become a doctor. Maybe I can cure my mother. Maybe we can have a house with a roof. But happiness on the street is fragile like glass. It breaks easily. 6 months later, Esther went to Mary's food stand after school, excited to show her a test paper with a perfect score. But the stand was closed. Mary was standing there with a suitcase. Auntie Mary? Esther asked, her smile fading. Mary looked sad. She had tears in her eyes. Esther, my visa came out. My sister in America finally sent for me. I have to go. Esther felt the ground shake. America? When are you coming back? Mary knelt down and held Esther's shoulders. I am not coming back, my dear. I am going for good. Take me with you, Esther cried, clutching Mary's dress. Please, Auntie, don't leave me. I can't, Mary sobbed. I tried, but the papers, they are only for me. I paid your school fees for this term, but after that, I cannot help you anymore. Mary hugged her one last time, pulled away, and got into a taxi. Esther ran after the car, screaming her name, running until her lungs burned and her legs gave out. She watched the red taillights disappear into the traffic. She was alone again. When the school term ended, the principal called Esther to his office. Your fees have not been paid, he said cold, not looking at her. Please, sir, Esther begged, falling to her knees. I will clean the floors. I will wash the toilets. Just let me stay. I want to learn. This is a business, not a charity, he said. Get out. He took her books. He took her peace. He threw her out. Esther went back to the corner of the street where her mother was singing to a dead beetle. She took off her uniform, folded it carefully, and put it in a plastic bag. It was the only clean thing she owned. She put on her old rags. The gutter girl was back. But something had changed. Before, Esther didn't know what she was missing. Now she knew. And the hunger for food was nothing compared to the hunger for books. She missed the sound of pages turning. She missed the feeling of her brain working hard. Every morning, she would watch other children walking to school in their crisp uniforms, and her heart would break a little more. Why, God? She whispered to the sky one night, as rain poured down on them, soaking them to the bone. Why did you give me this brain if you won't let me use it? Why did you show me the light just to throw me back in the dark? Her mother just laughed and splashed in a puddle. Desperation makes you do crazy things. Esther started wandering further away from their begging spot. She found herself walking towards the wealthy part of the city. The air smelled cleaner there. The houses had high fences topped with electric wire. And then she saw it. Eden Heights Academy. It wasn't just a school. It was a palace. The gates were golden. The buildings were white and tall. The children who went there arrived in big, shiny black cars with drivers who opened the doors for them. Esther stood across the street, hidden behind a tree, watching. She saw a girl about her age step out of a car. The girl looked sad. She was dragging her feet, looking at the ground. How can she be sad? Esther wondered. She has shoes. She has a backpack. She is going into paradise. Esther knew she couldn't go in the front gate. The security guards were big men with angry faces and batons. They would beat her if she even stepped on the sidewalk. But Esther was smart. She was a street survivor. She walked around the massive perimeter fence. She walked through the tall bushes and sharp thorns that scratched her arms and legs. She walked until she found a spot where the ground had washed away under the concrete fence. It was a small hole barely big enough for a dog. But Esther was thin. Starvation had made her small. She lay on her stomach in the mud. She wiggled. She pushed. Her dress caught on a root and tore, but she didn't care. She pushed herself through the hole and tumbled out onto soft green grass. She was inside. She quickly crawled behind a thick row of hibiscus flowers. Her heart was beating so loud she was sure everyone could hear it. She was in a garden. Not far away, there was a building with a large open window. It was a classroom. She could hear a voice. A teacher. Okay, class, today we are learning about the solar system. Who can tell me which planet is closest to the sun? Esther's eyes lit up. She knew this. She mouthed the answer silently. Mercury. She crept closer. There was a huge mango tree near the window. Its roots were large and twisted, creating a perfect hiding spot. Esther curled up between the roots. From here, she could hear everything. She closed her eyes and listened. She imagined she was sitting at a desk. She whispered the answers to every question the teacher asked. For 3 days, this became her life. She would beg in the morning with her mother, then run to Eden Heights, crawl through the hole and learn in secret. But on the 4th day, something happened. It was lunchtime. The bell rang, and the children spilled out onto the playground. Esther shrank back into the shadows of the mango tree roots. She had to be perfectly still. If anyone saw her, she was dead. Most of the children ran to the cafeteria or the football field. But one girl didn't. It was the sad girl Esther had seen getting out of the car. The girl walked slowly towards the mango tree. She was holding a lunchbox and a math textbook. She sat down on the bench right on the other side of the tree trunk where Esther was hiding. The girl opened her book and sighed. It was a heavy, frustrated sound. I hate this, the girl muttered to herself. She sounded like she was crying. I'm just stupid. I'll never understand fractions. Daddy is going to be so disappointed. Esther listened. She peeked around the bark of the tree. The girl was wiping tears from her face. Esther knew she should stay hidden. She knew it was dangerous. But Esther's heart was too big for her own good. She hated seeing people cry. And she hated seeing people struggle with math when the answer was so simple. Without thinking, Esther whispered, "You have to find the common denominator first." The girl on the bench froze. She looked around. Who said that? Esther clamped her hand over her mouth. Stupid. Stupid Esther. The girl stood up. She walked around the tree. Esther tried to curl into a ball to become invisible. But it was too late. The rich girl in the perfect uniform looked down. The poor girl in the dirty rags looked up. Their eyes met. The rich girl gasped, stepping back in shock. Who are you? How did you get in here? Esther trembled. She raised her hands in surrender. Please, she whispered, her voice shaking. Please don't scream. Please don't call the guards. I just want to learn. I'll leave. I promise I'll leave. The rich girl stared at her. She looked at Esther's dirty feet. She looked at her terrified eyes. Then the girl looked back at her math book. Wait, the rich girl said. Did you say you know how to do this? Esther paused. She nodded slowly. Yes, it's easy. The rich girl looked around to make sure no one was watching. Then she stepped closer. My name is Sarah, she said. If I don't pass this test, my father will take away my paints. He wants me to be a scientist, but I don't understand the numbers. Esther swallowed hard. I can show you, if you don't tell on me. Sarah hesitated. Then, she slowly sat down on the grass, right next to the dirty street girl. She pushed the book towards Esther. Show me, Sarah whispered. And just like that, the strangest friendship in the world began. But neither of them knew that a storm was coming. A storm named Daniel, Sarah's father, who was known as the strictest billionaire in the city. And he was not a man who liked surprises. For the first few minutes, Sarah just stared at Esther. It was hard for her to believe. Here was a girl with dirt on her face, no shoes, and a dress that looked like a rag, holding a math book like it was a treasure chest. Go on, Sarah whispered, looking over her shoulder to make sure no teachers were coming. Explain it. Esther took a deep breath. Her hands were shaking, but her mind was calm. Math was safe. Math made sense. Numbers didn't judge you. They just added up. Okay, Esther said, her voice small and scratchy. Imagine this pizza is cut into 4 slices. If you take one, that is 1/4. But if you cut the same pizza into 8 slices and take 2, it looks different, right? But it is the same amount of pizza. See? Esther drew a circle in the dirt with a stick. She divided it. She explained it in a way the teachers never did. She didn't use big, confusing words. She used pizza. She used oranges. She used stones. Sarah watched the stick moving in the dirt. Suddenly, her eyes went wide. Wait, Sarah said. That means the answer is 3? Esther smiled. It was a shy, beautiful smile that cracked through the dirt on her face. Yes, the answer is 3. Sarah sat back on the grass and let out a huge breath. Oh my God, I get it. I actually get it. She looked at Esther with new eyes. She didn't see a street rat anymore. She saw a lifeline. You are a genius, Sarah said. Esther looked down at her muddy toes. I just like numbers. Then, a loud sound broke the moment. Gruel. It was Esther's stomach. It sounded like an angry lion. Esther grabbed her belly, her face burning with shame. She hadn't eaten since yesterday morning, and that was just a half-rotten banana she found near the market. Sarah looked at Esther's stomach, then at the shiny pink lunchbox sitting on the bench. It was filled with a ham sandwich, an apple, a juice box, and a chocolate chip cookie. Sarah picked up the sandwich. Are you hungry? Esther nodded. She couldn't lie. Her pride was gone. Only hunger was left. Sarah handed her the sandwich. Take it. I'm not hungry anyway. My stomach hurts when I worry about math. Esther took the sandwich. She wanted to eat it slowly, like a lady, but she couldn't. She took a huge bite, then another. The taste of fresh bread and salty ham was so good it almost made her cry. She finished it in seconds. Thank you, Esther whispered, wiping crumbs from her mouth. Thank you so much. Sarah smiled sadly. Thank you. You just saved me from a 0 on my test. Suddenly, the school bell rang. It was loud and startling. I have to go, Sarah said, jumping up. She grabbed her book. Will you be here tomorrow, please? I have a science test on Friday and I don't understand atoms. Esther looked at the hole in the fence. She thought about the dangerous guards. She thought about her mother waiting on the hot street. But then she looked at Sarah's hopeful face, and she remembered the taste of the sandwich. I will be here, Esther promised. And so the routine began. Every day at lunchtime, while the other rich children played soccer or gossiped in the cafeteria, Sarah ran to the big mango tree at the back of the garden. And every day, Esther crawled through the mud, squeezed through the hole in the fence, and waited for her. It was a dangerous game. One afternoon, a gardener walked past with a wheelbarrow. Esther had to dive into a pile of dry leaves and hold her breath until her lungs burned. Another time, a teacher came out to smoke a cigarette near the tree. The girls had to sit in absolute silence for 10 minutes, Esther hiding behind the trunk while Sarah pretended to read, her heart pounding like a drum. But it was working. Esther taught Sarah everything. She explained how plants grow. She explained history like it was an exciting story about kings and wars. She made learning fun. In return, Sarah brought food. A lot of food. She told her mother to pack extra lunch because she was growing. She brought fried chicken, jollof rice, cupcakes, and cold bottles of water. Esther would eat half and save the other half in a plastic bag to take home to her mother, Naomi. Look, Mama, Esther would say at night, sitting under the bridge. God sent us chicken. Naomi would clap her hands and dance. The king is sending us a feast, she would shout. Esther would feed her mother, happy that for once, they weren't sleeping with empty bellies. But the friendship became about more than just food and grades. They started talking. My dad is never home, Sarah said one day, looking at the sky. He works all the time. He owns half the city, but he never smiles. He just wants me to be the best. If I get a B, he looks at me like I failed. At least you have a dad, Esther said softly. I don't know who my father is. My mom. She's sick in the head. She loves me, but she doesn't know me. Sometimes she calls me by other names. Sometimes she screams at me. Sarah reached out and took Esther's rough, dirty hand in her own soft, clean one. We are sisters now, Sarah said firmly. Secret sisters. 2 weeks later, the results of the big midterm exams came out. Sarah's teacher, Mrs. Obi, stood at the front of the class holding a stack of papers. She looked confused. She adjusted her glasses and looked at Sarah. Sarah, the teacher said, come here, please. The whole class went quiet. Sarah walked to the front, her legs shaking. Usually, this was the part where the teacher scolded her for failing. I don't know how you did it, Mrs. Obi said, a smile breaking across her face. But you got 100%. Perfect score. You even answered the bonus question correctly. The class gasped. Sarah took the paper. A big red A+ was written on top. Sarah grinned. She felt like she could fly. She couldn't wait to show Esther. But there was one person who was not smiling. That evening, in a massive mansion on the top of the hill, Daniel, the billionaire, sat in his leather chair. He held Sarah's report card. He was a scary man. He didn't yell often, but his silence was heavy. He built his empire by being smart and catching liars. Sarah, he said, his voice low. Yes, Daddy? Sarah asked, standing by the door. Last month, you could not do basic division. Today, you have a perfect score in advanced math. He put the paper down on his glass desk. He looked at her with sharp, cold eyes. Are you cheating? No, Daddy, Sarah cried. I promise. I studied. I really studied. Daniel stared at her. He wanted to believe her, but he knew his daughter. She struggled with school. A change this big, this fast? It was impossible. Who is helping you? He asked. Did you hire a teacher without telling me? No, Sarah stammered. I just focused. I studied in the garden during lunch. In the garden, Daniel repeated. He leaned back. Alone? Yes, Sarah lied. Her heart beat fast. Alone. Daniel nodded slowly. Okay, you can go. Sarah ran to her room. She thought she was safe, but she didn't know her father. Daniel picked up his phone. He dialed the number of the school principal. Hello? Yes, this is Daniel. I'm coming to the school tomorrow around lunchtime. No, don't tell Sarah. I want to see this studying for myself. I want to see how my daughter suddenly became Einstein. The next day, the sun was hot. Esther was sitting under the mango tree waiting. She had a new lesson planned today. She was going to teach Sarah about gravity. Sarah came running out of the building, smiling, waving her test paper in the air. Esther, Esther, look, Sarah whispered, shouted. Esther crawled out from the bushes, grinning. Did you pass? I got 100%. Sarah squealed. They hugged each other. Esther didn't care that she was dirtying Sarah's uniform. Sarah didn't care either. They jumped up and down. Okay, Sarah said, sitting down. Teach me the next thing. I want to get another A. I want to show my dad I can do it. Okay, Esther said. She picked up a mango that had fallen on the grass. Gravity is what pulls things down. Watch. The two girls were lost in their own world. They were laughing. They were learning. They felt safe under the big leaves of the mango tree. They didn't hear the sound of the heavy iron gates of the school opening. They didn't see the long, black limousine rolling up the driveway like a shark in the water. They didn't see the principal running nervously to open the car door. And they didn't see Daniel stepping out. He adjusted his suit jacket. He didn't go to the office. He walked straight toward the garden. His shoes made a crunching sound on the gravel path, getting closer and closer. Where is she? Daniel asked the principal, his voice stern. She usually sits by the old mango tree at the back, sir, the principal said, pointing a shaking finger. Daniel walked past the flower beds. He could hear voices. He heard a child explaining science. But the voice didn't belong to his daughter. It was a voice he didn't recognize. He stepped around the final bush. He saw them. He saw his daughter sitting on the grass. And he saw a dirty, barefoot girl standing over her, holding a mango. Daniel's face turned red with rage. He didn't see a teacher. He saw a threat. He saw filth next to his princess. "What is this dirty thing doing near my daughter?" he roared. Esther dropped the mango. It rolled across the grass and hit Daniel's shiny shoe. Daniel looked at the mango, then at Esther. His eyes were cold as ice. "Security!" he shouted. "Get this trash out of here. Now!" The security guards were fast. They were two giant men in blue uniforms, and they didn't look kind. They grabbed Esther by her thin, dusty arms. "No! Please!" Esther screamed, her feet kicking in the air as they lifted her off the ground like a sack of potatoes. "I didn't steal anything. I promise. Get her out of my sight," Daniel said, turning his back. He pulled out a handkerchief to wipe his shoe where the mango had hit it. He looked disgusted. "Daddy, stop!" Sarah screamed. It was a scream so loud and so full of pain that Daniel froze. He turned around. Sarah wasn't crying anymore. She was angry. She ran forward and pushed one of the security guards. "Let her go!" Sarah yelled. "Don't you touch her!" The guard looked at Daniel, confused. "Sir!" "Sarah, step away," Daniel said, his voice cold. "This girl is a trespasser. She is dangerous. Who knows what diseases she has? She probably tricked you into giving her money." "She didn't take any money," Sarah cried. She ran to Esther and hugged her dirty dress. "She is my teacher, Daddy. She is the one. She is the genius." Daniel stared at them. His daughter, the heiress to a billion-dollar empire, hugging a street child covered in mud. The silence in the garden was heavy. "What did you say?" Daniel asked slowly. "You asked me how I got 100%, Sarah said, tears streaming down her face. "It wasn't me, Daddy. It was her. Esther taught me. She explained the math. She explained the science. She knows everything." Daniel looked at Esther. She was trembling in the guard's grip, looking at the ground. She looked like she hadn't eaten a good meal in years. She looked like nothing. Daniel laughed. It was a harsh, dry laugh. "This," Daniel pointed at Esther. "You want me to believe that this girl, who probably can't even read, taught you advanced mathematics? Sarah, don't lie to me to save your little friend." "Test her," Sarah challenged. Daniel paused. He looked at his daughter's fierce eyes. He had never seen her so confident. "Fine," Daniel said. He signaled the guards. "Put her down." The guards dropped Esther. She landed on her knees, shaking. Daniel reached into his expensive suit jacket and pulled out a gold pen and a small leather notebook. He walked over to Esther. He towered over her like a skyscraper. "My daughter says you are smart," Daniel said, his voice deep. "I think you are a liar. I think you are a thief. But I am a fair man." He opened the notebook to a blank page. "I am going to write a problem down. It is not a problem for a 12-year-old. It is a problem from the engineering entrance exam I gave to my interns last week." Grown men struggled with it. He scribbled quickly on the paper. X's and Y's, square roots, and fractions danced across the page. It looked like a foreign language to Sarah. Daniel ripped the page out and threw it on the grass in front of Esther. "Solve it," he commanded. "If you solve it, I will listen to you. If you get it wrong, or if you can't do it, the police will take you to jail for trespassing. You have 2 minutes." Esther looked at the paper. Her heart was hammering in her chest. Jail? If she went to jail, who would feed her mother? Her mother would die alone on the street. She had to solve it. She picked up the paper with trembling fingers. She looked at the numbers. At first, her eyes blurred with tears. But then, she blinked. She took a deep breath. She focused. The numbers stopped being scary. They started to form a pattern. It was like a puzzle. She saw the logic. She saw the answer hiding behind the symbols. "I need a pencil," Esther whispered. Daniel raised an eyebrow. He handed her his gold pen. "Use this. Don't break it." Esther lay on her stomach on the grass. She started to write. Her hand moved fast. She crossed out numbers. She carried the one. She divided. 1 minute passed. The security guards watched, bored. They expected her to fail. Daniel checked his diamond watch. 30 seconds. Esther didn't look up. She was in the zone. The world disappeared. It was just her and the math. 10 seconds. Daniel counted down. 5, 4, 3. Done, Esther said. She sat up and held out the paper. Daniel took it. He looked at the paper. He expected to see scribbles or a wrong answer. He looked at the first line. Correct. He looked at the working out. It was cleaner than his own engineer's work. He looked at the final answer at the bottom, circled 3 times. Daniel stopped breathing for a second. His eyes went wide. He looked at the paper, then at the dirty girl sitting in the grass, then back at the paper. It was perfect. It was solved in a way he hadn't even thought of, a shorter, faster method. Impossible, Daniel muttered. Is it right, Daddy? Sarah asked, stepping forward. Is it right? Daniel looked at Esther. The anger in his eyes was gone, replaced by something else. Shock and curiosity. Who are you? Daniel asked, his voice quiet now. Which school do you go to? Who trained you? I don't go to school, sir, Esther said, looking down. I used to, a long time ago, but now I just learn from listening. From listening? Daniel asked. Listening to what? To the windows, Esther pointed at the classroom. I sit by the fence. I listen to the teachers. I read newspapers from the trash. I read Sarah's books. Daniel felt a strange feeling in his chest. He was a billionaire. He employed thousands of people. He had met geniuses from Oxford and Harvard. But he had never met anyone like this. A diamond in the dust. Where are your parents? Daniel asked. Esther flinched. I don't have a father. My mother. She is sick. Sick? Is she in the hospital? No, sir, Esther whispered. She is on the street. Under the bridge at mile 12. Daniel stared at her. A girl with a brain like this living under a bridge? It was a waste. It was a crime against nature. He made a decision. Get in the car, Daniel said. Esther froze. Sir, I said get in the car. Daniel pointed to the long black limousine parked on the driveway. You and Sarah. We are going to mile 12. Why? Esther asked, terrified. Are you taking me to the police station? No, Daniel said, buttoning his jacket. I want to meet this mother of yours. I want to see if your story is true. Because if it is, things are going to change. Esther didn't know if change meant good or bad, but she had no choice. She stood up, brushed the grass off her dirty dress, and followed Sarah into the car. It was the first time Esther had ever been inside a car like that. The seats were made of soft cream leather. The air was cold like a refrigerator. There was a small TV screen. Sarah held Esther's hand the whole way. It's okay, Sarah whispered. He believes you now. But Esther wasn't so sure. She looked out the tinted window as the city flashed by. They left the beautiful mansions and clean streets. They drove past the markets, past the traffic jams, into the rough, dirty part of town. Daniel sat opposite them, watching Esther. He was calculating. He was planning. Stop here, Esther said suddenly, her voice shaking. The driver pulled over. They were at the chaotic underbridge of mile 12. It was loud. It smelled of rotten fruit and exhaust fumes. People were shouting, selling wares, pushing carts. She is there. Esther pointed to a dark corner near a heap of trash. That is where we sleep. Daniel opened the door. The heat and the noise hit him instantly. He stepped out, his shiny shoes looking out of place in the mud. Esther and Sarah followed. Mama, Esther called out, running ahead. Mama, I'm back. She ran to the pile of cardboard boxes where her mother usually sat. She had saved half of Sarah's sandwich in her pocket for her. Mama, look, I have food. Esther reached the spot, but the cardboard was torn apart. The blanket was gone. The old pot they used to drink water was kicked over. Her mother was not there. Esther spun around. Panic seized her throat. Mama? She screamed. She grabbed a woman selling roasted corn nearby. Ma, where is the woman who sits here? Where is my mother? The corn seller looked at Esther with pity. She shook her head. They came just now, the woman said. The city task force. They were clearing the streets. They said she was a nuisance. They said she was mad. Esther's blood ran cold. Where did they take her? They beat her, the woman whispered. She was screaming your name. They threw her in the back of the truck. They took her to the government asylum. But you know that place. People who go there, they don't come back. Esther screamed. It was a sound of pure heartbreak. She fell to her knees in the mud, clutching the sandwich she had saved. No, no, Mama. Daniel stood behind her. He heard everything. He saw the devastation on the little girl's face. Then his phone rang. He looked at it. It was his personal investigator. He had sent him a picture of Esther while they were in the car to run a background check. Daniel answered. What is it? The investigator's voice on the other end was trembling. Sir, you are not going to believe this. I ran the facial recognition on the girl and the mother like you asked. The mother? Naomi? She isn't just a beggar. Who is she? Daniel asked, watching Esther cry in the dirt. Sir, 12 years ago, she was the secretary to your business rival, Chief Badmus. She disappeared after a scandal. Rumor was she was pregnant. Daniel's eyes narrowed. So, sir, the investigator paused. The DNA markers from the hospital records. Esther isn't just a random street child. There is a 99% match. Match to who? Daniel demanded. To you, sir. Esther is your daughter. Daniel dropped the phone. It hit the mud. He stared at the back of the dirty, crying girl kneeling in the trash. The world seemed to stop spinning. He didn't just see a genius anymore. He saw his own flesh and blood. But before he could speak, a police siren wailed in the distance, getting louder and louder, coming straight for them. The police siren was so loud it hurt Esther's ears. A white truck with rusty bars on the windows screeched to a halt right in front of them. The side door flew open, and 3 large officers in black uniforms jumped out. They were holding batons. Clear the area, one of them shouted. He saw Esther kneeling in the mud, crying. Hey, you, little girl, get in the truck. No beggars allowed here. The officer reached out to grab Esther's shoulder. His hand was big and rough. Esther screamed and covered her head, expecting to be hit. But the hit never came. Don't you dare touch her. The voice was low, but it stopped the officer cold. Daniel stepped out of the shadows. He didn't care that his expensive Italian suit was getting splashed with dirty water. He didn't care that he was standing in a pile of garbage. He looked like a warrior protecting his treasure. The police officer looked up. He saw the tall man. He saw the gold watch. He saw the limo parked behind him. And then he recognized the face. Everyone in the city knew Daniel's face. He was on the news, on billboards, on the cover of magazines. Mr. Daniel? The officer stammered, lowering his baton. Sir? What are you doing in this dump? I am picking up my family, Daniel said. His voice was like steel. The officer looked confused. He looked at Sarah, the clean rich girl, and then at Esther, the dirty street girl. Family? Sir, this is just a street rat. We are rounding them up. Her mother was just taken to the asylum. She is crazy, sir. Daniel took a step closer. He was so close the officer had to step back. That street rat, Daniel hissed, is under my protection, and if you ever call her that again, I will have your badge, your job, and your pension by tomorrow morning. Do you understand? The officer gulped. He was shaking. Yes, sir. Sorry, sir. Now, Daniel barked. Where did you take the woman? The one you took 10 minutes ago. Where is she? The government asylum, sir. On the outskirts of town. But sir, it is a bad place. You don't want to go there. Get out of my way, Daniel said. He turned to Esther. She was still on her knees, shaking with fear. She looked up at him. She didn't understand what was happening. Why was this billionaire defending her? Why was he looking at her with tears in his eyes? Daniel knelt down in the mud. He didn't care about his pants. He reached out and gently took Esther's hands. His hands were warm and strong. "Esther," he said softly. "Stand up." "My mama," Esther sobbed. "They took her." "I know," Daniel said. "And we are going to get her back. Right now." He helped her up. He took off his suit jacket and wrapped it around her shoulders. It was huge on her. It smelled of expensive cologne and safety. "Get in the car," Daniel ordered. As they drove away, the atmosphere in the car was heavy. Sarah was holding Esther's hand tight. Esther was shivering. But Daniel was staring at Esther. He looked at her nose. It was the same shape as his mother's. He looked at her hands. They were long and slender, just like his. He thought about the phone call. 99% match. Guilt washed over him like a tidal wave. For 12 years, he had been living in a mansion, eating the best food, sleeping on silk sheets. And for 12 years, his own flesh and blood had been sleeping in the rain, fighting rats for food. How? He asked himself. How did this happen? He remembered Naomi. She was his secretary years ago. She was beautiful, smart, and kind. They had a secret romance. But then, one day, she just vanished. She left a letter saying she didn't love him anymore. She said she was moving to London to marry another man. Daniel had been heartbroken. He had been angry. He thought she betrayed him. But now, looking at Esther, he realized it was all a lie. She didn't go to London. She went to the streets. Why? Faster! Daniel yelled at the driver. Drive faster! They arrived at the asylum 30 minutes later. It looked like a prison. High walls, barbed wire, and the sound of screaming coming from inside. It smelled of bleach and sickness. Esther grabbed Daniel's hand. She was terrified. Stay close to me, Daniel said. He marched to the front desk. The receptionist looked up, bored. Visiting hours are over. Come back to. Daniel slammed his hand on the desk. I am Daniel, and I am looking for a woman named Naomi brought in today. Open the gate. Now. The power in his voice made the receptionist jump. She typed frantically on her computer. Yes, sir. She is in Ward C, the high-risk ward. They walked down long, dark hallways. People were reaching out through the bars, begging for water, begging for help. Sarah hid her face in Daniel's shirt. Esther walked with her head down, trying to be brave. They reached Ward C. It was a room with 10 metal beds. There, Esther whispered. She pointed to a bed in the corner. A woman was tied to the bed with leather straps. She was thrashing around, screaming at the ceiling. Her hair was matted. Her clothes were torn. Mama! Esther cried. She ran to the bed. Esther, wait! Daniel called, but she was too fast. Esther grabbed her mother's hand through the straps. Mama! It's me. It's Esther. I'm here. Naomi stopped screaming. She turned her head slowly. Her eyes were wild, red, and unfocused. She looked at Esther. For a second, there was no recognition. The birds! Naomi whispered. Did you bring the golden wings? No, Mama, Esther cried, tears falling on her mother's face. I brought help. Look, we are going home. Naomi blinked. Her eyes shifted. She looked past Esther. She saw Sarah. And then, she saw Daniel. Daniel stepped into the light. He looked at the woman he had loved 12 years ago. She looked broken. She looked old. But it was her. Naomi, Daniel whispered. His voice broke. It's me. It's Daniel. The room went silent. Naomi's eyes went wide. The madness seemed to clear for a second, replaced by pure, absolute terror. She started to shake violently. She pulled against the straps until her wrists bled. No! Naomi screamed. It was a scream that made the nurses come running. No! Get away! Get him away! Naomi! Please! Daniel stepped closer, his hands up. I'm here to help. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. Liar! Naomi shrieked. She looked at Esther. Run, Esther. Run. He found us. The devil found us. Esther was confused. Mama? He is nice. He saved me. He will kill you. Naomi yelled, her eyes bulging. He sent her. He sent the witch. She said if I ever told him, she would kill my baby. Daniel froze. Who? Naomi? Who sent who? Who threatened you? Naomi was hyperventilating. Her chest was heaving. Your wife. Your wife came to me. She said she knew about the baby. She said if I didn't disappear, if I ever tried to contact you, she would bury my child. Daniel felt like he had been punched in the gut. His wife, Victoria. Victoria had died in a car accident 5 years ago. But 12 years ago, she was his fiancée. She was jealous. She was powerful. Victoria did this? Daniel whispered. The horror of it crushed him. His fiancée had threatened a pregnant woman and forced her onto the streets to protect her reputation? She is watching. Naomi screamed, staring at the empty corner of the room. She is watching. Don't let her take Esther. Don't let her. Suddenly, Naomi's body went rigid. Her back arched off the bed. Her eyes rolled back into her head. She began to convulse violently. Foam gathered at the corners of her mouth. Mama! Esther screamed. Doctor! Daniel yelled, turning to the hallway. We need a doctor. Now! Nurses rushed in, pushing Esther and Daniel aside. She's seizing, a nurse shouted. Her heart rate is dropping. Get the crash cart. Clear the room, another doctor yelled. No, I won't leave her. Esther held onto the bed frame, sobbing. Daniel grabbed Esther and pulled her back. He picked her up in his arms as she kicked and screamed. Save her. Daniel commanded the doctors. If she dies, this hospital closes down. Do you hear me? Save her. They were pushed out into the hallway. The door slammed shut. Through the small glass window, they could see the doctors shocking Naomi's chest. Thump. Her body jumped. Thump. Esther buried her face in Daniel's chest, weeping uncontrollably. Sarah was crying too, holding onto Daniel's leg. Daniel stood there, holding his 2 daughters. One he raised, and one he lost. He looked at the closed door. The secret was out. The woman he had married, the woman Sarah called Mommy before she died. She was a monster. She had destroyed Naomi's life. She had forced his own child to eat from the garbage. Daniel felt a rage he had never felt before. But mostly he felt fear. Because the buzzing sound of the heart monitor inside the room suddenly turned into a long, flat beep. The doctor inside stopped moving. He looked at the clock on the wall. He slowly pulled the sheet up over Naomi's face. Daniel's heart stopped. He looked down at Esther. She was looking at the window. She saw the sheet. No! Esther whispered. No! And then, everything went black. The sound of the flatline beep was the loudest sound in the world. Daniel burst into the room. He didn't care about the doctors. He didn't care about the rules. He ran to the bed and grabbed Naomi's shoulders. Naomi! No! Wake up! He shouted. I can fix this. I have money. I can buy the hospital. Just wake up. But Naomi didn't move. Her eyes were closed. Her face, which had been full of fear and pain just moments ago, was now calm. The years of madness, hunger, and suffering were gone. She was finally at peace. Esther stood in the doorway. She didn't scream anymore. She didn't cry. She just felt cold, like all the warmth had left the universe. The doctor placed a hand on Daniel's shoulder. I'm sorry, sir. Her heart, it was too weak. The shock was too much. Daniel slowly let go of Naomi. He turned and looked at Esther. He walked over to her, tears streaming down his face, and knelt down. He tried to hug her. Esther stepped back. Her eyes were empty. You let her die, Esther whispered. No, Esther, Daniel choked out. I tried. You came too late, she said. Her voice was like broken glass. You are a billionaire. You have everything. But you came too late. She turned around and walked away, down the long white hallway, her oversized jacket dragging on the floor. Sarah ran after her, crying, But Esther didn't stop. The funeral was the biggest the city had ever seen. Daniel wanted to make up for 12 years of neglect. He bought a coffin made of pure mahogany and gold. He hired the best choir. He filled the church with thousands of white roses because he remembered that Naomi loved flowers. People from the city, rich politicians, business partners, famous actors, came to the funeral. They whispered behind their hands, "Who is he burying?" They say it was a mad woman from the street. Why is Daniel crying so much for a beggar? Esther sat in the front row. She was wearing a black dress that Daniel had bought for her. It was made of silk and cost more than all the food she and her mother had eaten in their entire lives. But Esther hated it, felt heavy. She looked at the coffin. My mother is a queen now, she thought bitterly. But when she was alive, you treated her like a dog. When the coffin was lowered into the ground, it began to rain. Daniel stood next to Esther holding a black umbrella over her head. She didn't look at him. She just watched the dirt cover the only person who had ever loved her. I promise you, Daniel whispered to her in the rain, I will never let you suffer again. Esther didn't answer. Life in the mansion was strange. It was quiet, too quiet. On the streets there was always noise. Cars honking, people shouting, music playing. In Daniel's house, the floors were covered in thick carpets that swallowed the sound of footsteps. Esther was given a room that was bigger than the entire bridge she used to sleep under. It had a bed that looked like a cloud, a closet full of new clothes, and a window that looked out over the garden where she used to hide. But for the first week, Esther didn't sleep on the bed. Every night, Daniel would check on her. And every night, he would find her curled up on the rug in the corner of the room, sleeping on the floor with her old blanket. It broke his heart. One evening, Daniel knocked on her door. He came in holding a small box. Esther? He asked gently. Esther was sitting by the window doing math problems in a notebook. It was the only thing that kept her calm. I have something for you, Daniel said. He sat on the edge of the bed. Esther looked up. I don't want gifts. I want my mom. I know, Daniel said. He took a deep breath. Esther, there is something I need to tell you. Something I should have told you at the hospital. He opened the box. Inside was a crumpled, old photograph. It showed a younger Daniel, smiling and happy, holding a beautiful woman in his arms. The woman was Naomi. She looked healthy and radiant. Esther gasped. Mama? Yes, Daniel said, his voice shaking. We were in love, Esther. 12 years ago. Before the madness. Before the streets. She was the love of my life. Esther looked at him, confused. But she said you were the devil. She said you sent the bad lady. I didn't, Daniel said firmly. I didn't know you existed, Esther. If I had known, I would have torn the world apart to find you. He reached out and took her hand. This time she didn't pull away. The test results came back yesterday, Daniel whispered. Esther, I am your father. The room went silent. Esther looked at the photo, then at Daniel. She saw her nose in his face. She saw her hands in his hands. You left us, she accused, tears welling up. I didn't leave you. I was lied to. I was told she went away to be happy. I was stupid. I should have looked harder. Daniel started to cry, a powerful man weeping in front of a child. I am so sorry, Esther. I can't bring her back. I know I can't. But please, let me be your dad now. Let me fix this. Esther looked at him. She saw the pain in his eyes. It was the same pain she felt. She slowly moved from the window. She walked over to him. And for the first time, she let him hug her. She cried into his expensive shirt. I miss her, Daddy. I miss her so much. I know, baby, Daniel whispered, holding her tight. I know. 6 months passed. The transformation was incredible. With good food, a safe home, and love, Esther bloomed. She grew taller. Her skin glowed. Her hair was braided neatly. She went to Eden Heights Academy officially. She walked through the front gate holding Sarah's hand. No more hiding in bushes. No more holes in fences. She was the top student in every class. She joined the chess club and beat the seniors. She entered the national math competition and won first prize. Sarah was her biggest cheerleader. "That's my sister," she would scream from the audience. But not everyone was happy. The rich society of the city was cruel. They whispered. They called Esther the gutter princess. They laughed at her behind her back. Daniel decided it was time to shut them up. He organized the annual Future Gala. It was the most important event of the year. Every billionaire, minister, and celebrity was there. Daniel bought Esther a dress made of gold silk. "Tonight," he told her. "You are not hiding. Tonight you shine." They walked into the ballroom. The music stopped. Hundreds of eyes turned to stare at Daniel and his two daughters. A woman in a red dress walked up to them. It was Mrs. Benson, the head of the Parents' Association. She had a sour look on her face. "Daniel," Mrs. Benson said with a fake smile. "So this is the charity case you picked up? It's very noble of you to let a street child play dress up." The room went deadly quiet. Sarah looked angry. Daniel clenched his fist. But Esther stepped forward. She didn't look down. She looked Mrs. Benson straight in the eye. "I am not a charity case," Esther said. Her voice was clear and strong. "And I am not playing." Mrs. Benson laughed. "Oh? Then tell me, child, do you even know which fork to use for the salad? Or are you used to eating with your hands in the dirt?" Some people giggled. "I know which fork to use," Esther said calmly. "But do you know how to calculate the structural load of this building? Because I was looking at the pillars in the lobby. The west pillar has a stress fracture. If the wind speed outside increases by 10%, the roof will collapse in approximately 12 minutes. Mrs. Benson blinked. "What? I also know," Esther continued, "that your husband's company is about to go bankrupt because he didn't carry the one in his tax audit last year. I read the financial report in the lobby newspaper. It was a very simple math error." The room gasped. Mrs. Benson turned pale. Her husband, standing nearby, dropped his drink. She's right," the husband stammered. "How did she know that?" Daniel smiled. Proud, massive smile. He put his hand on Esther's shoulder. "Ladies and gentlemen," Daniel announced to the room, "this is not a street child. This is Esther, my daughter, and she is smarter than all of you combined." The room erupted in applause. Mrs. Benson scurried away. From that night on, no one ever mocked Esther again. They respected her, not because of her father's money, but because of her own brilliance. 5 years later, the sun was setting over the city. A new building stood in the center of town. It was beautiful, painted in bright colors, with a big playground and open windows. A ribbon-cutting ceremony was taking place. Esther, now 17 years old and preparing for university, stood at the podium. Sarah stood next to her, beaming. Daniel sat in the front row, looking older but happier than he had ever been. "Welcome," Esther said into the microphone, "to the Naomi Center for Education." The crowd cheered. "This school is not for the rich," Esther said. "It is free. It is for the children who are forgotten. The children who sleep under bridges. The children who have to sell water to survive." She looked out at the crowd. She saw hundreds of children sitting there. Some were barefoot. Some were dirty. They looked just like she used to. "People used to call me gutter girl," Esther said. "They said I was nothing. But my sister saw me. My father saw me. And because they saw me, I am here today." She pointed to the sign above the door. It was a painting of a mango tree. "This school is a promise," Esther said, tears shining in her eyes, "that no matter where you come from, your mind is a treasure. You are not invisible. We see you." She cut the red ribbon. The children ran in, screaming with joy, grabbing books, touching the clean desks. Esther walked down the steps. Daniel hugged her. "She would be proud," Daniel whispered. "I know," Esther smiled. She looked up at the sky. A bird was flying high above the city, its wings catching the golden light of the sun. "Fly high, Mama," Esther whispered. "I got my wings." The end. Thank you so much for watching this story. If Esther's journey touched your heart, Please subscribe to this channel and hit the like button to support our growth. We have many more powerful stories coming soon. Don't forget to share this with your friends and family. See you in the next video.